Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this panel. This is a panel with two music support team members, and we've got two artists, and we'll introduce everyone in a few minutes. But the focus of this panel is going to be on championing the well-being of people in the music industry. We'll be hearing stories and anecdotes around people's experiences. There might be some slightly, not necessarily triggering, but sort of challenging kind of experiential stuff that people talk about. But hopefully, within the context of this, we're going to frame it as looking at the positive outputs that artists are finding to maintain their well-being. So I'm Joe Hastings. I'm the Chief Exec of Music Support. Music Support is a charity that supports artists and people in the industry through preventative, educational resources. So we provide well-being workshops, mental health first aid training, and addiction recovery workshops through to crisis interventions. So we support people into detox and rehab. We provide therapy for people who've got mild to moderate challenges around mental health and substance use issues. And we also provide peer opportunities, so peer network opportunities. We'll be doing that throughout the UK. We've just launched a new campaign with Headstock in Manchester. So we've got 4 new peer support groups in Manchester, which we're running through until early next year. And then the hope is that actually that'll become something that's kind of sustained for the future. We're also doing something similar up in the northeast, and we'll be planning something similar in London as well. So the idea is, our aim is to build new networks and new spaces for people to have positive conversations around promoting their well-being. So that's enough about us and enough about me. We'll go down this way. Owen.
Yes, so I'm a family support manager in music support, and also work as an integrative therapist as well. So it'd be my role to be the front line of musicians and music industry and support them with their mental health and substance use challenges. And I've been there for about a year now. I just qualified for about 6 months as well. So that's me.
Thanks, Owen. Winnie.
So I'm Winnie. I'm an artist, and I am here to talk about my personal experiences. And the reason I think it's so important to talk about mental health and support is because I don't think there's ever been as many independent artists and artists who are basically doing everything. They're their own bosses, managing budget or lack of budget, day jobs, and I think we're also still really lucky in this time to know so much about mental health challenges and to have loads of support, but it's all quite disparate, and not everybody knows what's available and what they can do. So that's why I think it's important to talk about.
Thanks, Winnie.
Good evening. Good afternoon. That's a good start. My name's Miyagee. I'm a 27-year-old musician from South Africa via London and East Belfast, and some would consider me an advocate for mental health, an advocate for wellness, an advocate for, maybe like things like, picking yourself up when you fall down in your music, substance abuse, and other things like that. So that's why I'm assuming I'm here, and that's also what I'm here to talk about today as well.
Thanks, yeah. So just for a bit of context, over the last year, Music Support as a charity has seen a 51% increase in people requiring our support and services. And I think by the end of the year, we're projecting close to 70% increase. So we're seeing a really big and much higher level of engagement around the support that we offer. And critically, obviously, we as a charity are delivering to the capacity at the moment. So we're looking to grow the services that we can provide through new networks. But the reason why we're seeing such an increase is actually somewhat positive, because actually it means that people are willing to engage and talk about some of the challenges they're experiencing and actually reach out for support. We're hopefully reaching networks of people and promoting the services more in a more kind of grassroots way, so a more peer-to-peer way, which is really positive. But it does also obviously suggest that the issues are kind of sort of compounded by some of the kind of ongoing challenges around some levels of stress and burnout, some of the issues around sort of precarity of employment, and also just more generally antisocial hours and stuff like that. So thinking about some of those subjects, Winnie, can we start with you, because you've talked a little bit about some of the things that you experienced previously, and it'd be useful to sort of maybe spend some time hearing about how they kind of impacted you before we talk about how you got through and now are able to manage some of those things in a more positive way.
So I used to be like incredibly shy, and this would not have been possible a few years ago to speak in front of multiple people. So obviously as an artist, you're like performing and being vulnerable, telling all your secrets in your songs. So it's definitely been like a very long journey. I sang in a gig I did on Friday that I used to be so shy that one time my phone died and I was meant to meet some friends, and a normal person would just go, like a normal thing to do rather would be to go and ask someone what time is it, so you know you're like close to the time you're meant to meet the person. But because I didn't want to speak to a single soul, I bought things and checked the time on the receipt 4 times instead of asking someone, and like on a self-checkout, instead of asking someone like what is the time, so I could be on time. So that's how shy I used to be, anxious and shy.
And then in terms of, so we spoke previously about some of the issues of anxiety in terms of how it might impact on your mood and ability to kind of manage and maintain the sort of your performing and your kind of creativity.
Yeah.
Is that something that you feel comfortable talking about now?
Yeah. So wait, so what was the question?
Just in terms of your, like how some of that anxiety and some of the things around, I guess, feeling shy impacted on like kind of progressing your career and those kind of things in the early days.
Yeah, so it like wouldn't be possible at all to like have this conversation. Would not have been possible. I would have been like sweating. I would have like not like I would have tripped over my words. I wouldn't know what to say, let alone to perform. So I think it's like quite it's not even like it's before even wanting to be a musician. It was even like day-to-day normal stuff. If I hadn't planned a conversation and known what you're going to say, what I'm going to say, like how it's going to go, I would not have the conversation. So I wouldn't be able to like push because you always have to promote yourself and push yourself forward and show your best qualities, and that was not possible for a long time. And I was very aware that it needed to be sorted out because it's like not a sustainable way of living, and I think it was one of those things where like I was comfortable in my shyness because it was like known to me. I was like, I just won't speak to anyone. That's comfortable. But also it's uncomfortable because then it stopped me from doing everything I wanted to do. So that's where I came from. That's where I started.
And did you find it difficult sometimes in terms of like managing workload if you were busy? Are you able, or have you always been able to kind of switch off, or is it sometimes in the past been difficult to switch off? And have you experienced elements of kind of like high levels of stress and maybe burnout and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, definitely burnt out. Many times I've burnt out because I just love working. I love like setting myself a deadline or a task and just getting it done. And like I'm really good at staying really focused and also having multiple things at once. Like I'm good at it. So unless I schedule in, like I have to schedule in a day off and count it as an activity, that counts. So then it's not like I feel like I'm not doing anything. So previously I have like gone so far and also been unaware that I was burnt out until someone's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. Although I'm clearly crumbling, like all my clothes are on backwards, or like I haven't eaten in like 2 days because I'm just like non-stop. So that's also where I started.
Yeah. And Leo, from your perspective in the early days, what were the things that you found challenging, I guess, in terms of managing and maintaining and sort of supporting your well-being and all that kind of stuff?
I guess it's because I'm very similar to Winnie. We're both the same, but a little bit the same, a little bit different. We're both very motivated, very driven people. So at the start of my career, I wanted to work on my skill set. So I was very driven and very passionate about that. But at the same time, I was also in uni. And then at the same time, I was also working night shift in the Holiday Inn just down the road. So I was trying to spin all these plates from about 18 to 21. So my consistent problem throughout there was adequately delegating time to each thing, as well as delegating time to myself to recharge, spend time with my friends, spend time with my families. I became more cranky, I became burnt out, and that was pretty much the start of it. At the very, very start, it was a lot of burnout, and then maybe a couple of things came from that after not dealing with the burnout as well. It's like I was burnt out, and I was very clearly aware I was burnt out, but that drive and that thing inside me that you also have just kept me going. I'm like, next goal, next target, next checkpoint. And then eventually just sort of powered up until one day I just sort of sat down and I was like, let me try and delegate, or let me try and get rid of one thing that isn't a priority. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I started for me, I guess.
And was the lifestyle you were leading there? Did it feel like it was sustainable, or like looking back on it, can you see now that it was going to eventually lead to sort of challenges?
No, the lifestyle wasn't sustainable because, like I say, so it's like if you're doing music or any art form or anything that involves independent contracting, that means, and you also have a day job or you're in uni or education, that means during the day, from the early afternoon / morning, you're in uni for 2-3 hours a day, 3 times a week. And then during your free time, you're working on your craft. And then come the weekend, you're doing 2 or 3 night shifts as well, just to balance the books and have yourself an extra little bit of money left over to do what you need to do. So it wasn't sustainable at all, but at the time I very much thought it was because I was young and full of beans and all that there. So.
Yeah. And Owen, are they similar themes that you see? Obviously, I do as well because we work for the same charity. But you're much more directly engaged with the beneficiaries we support, and obviously working kind of therapeutically with them. Are there kind of common themes, and are there other challenges that you see through the people that we support?
Yeah, I mean, what Winnie was talking about really resonated with a lot of what we see, which is there's a huge amount of motivation to do well in the career, which is what it takes, and unfortunately, it isn't a career that's very well set up financially. So there is a lot of, again, what Leo was talking about, of having to do more work. But I think that there's a lot of identity that can be wrapped up with music, and people can become kind of their own. People can become their artists rather than themselves. And then whenever there is like you have a good period, you have your first million streams, it can feel wonderful, and then the next thing you know, there's a 6-month quiet period. It can be a really difficult career to sustain because it does come in waves. It is not consistent. But I would say that we do see a lot of things like imposter syndrome, and you'd see it more with imposter syndrome more with the more successful someone is, it's more likely. A lot of the reason that is, it's if we're looking at people's motivators and what actually motivates them to do music and to get successful. If it comes from a belief of as they are right now that they're not good enough, that if that is the motivator, the more they will work towards the goal of success with the motivation that they're not good enough in order to try to prove that, the more they're actually reaffirming that belief of that they're not good enough. So imposter syndrome is something we would see a lot come through the door. We would see a lot of burnout come through the door, and that can be symptomatic of anxiety, depression. But definitely both of the things that you've both spoke about are very common in the industry, yeah.
And what are some of the sort of negative ways that you see people try to, or some of the more challenging ways that you see people try to support themselves? So what are the kind of what are some of the bad ideas that people might pick up as ways of managing some of those things?
Yeah, I mean, it's the music industry has been built on sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and the studies around mental health challenges in the industry have said that 80% of people that are creative will experience mental health challenges. And if there is things that are being romanticized and glorified in the industry, like alcohol and drugs, that is what's being used. And if you think of what it is, it's a lot of the time a medication. It's a medicine. It serves a purpose, but it will eventually turn into your poison. So if there is a high rate of anxiety, a high rate of depression, the thing that will be used to soothe that and to kind of numb it out is substances. Now, what music support want to do is to actually help offer people come in with new tools help them identify these things earlier. Prevention is better than the cure. And then hopefully what we'll be able to do is help people actually sustain themselves in a career that does romanticize substance use.
Prevention is also much cheaper than the cure.
It is.
If you educate and support people to manage and maintain their well-being and to kind of to keep balanced and to look to spot warning signs that that balance might be kind of teetering, and they've got the tools and resources to work through that, then often people can kind of then maintain themselves and maintain their well-being, whereas too commonly I think people maybe become over reliant on things, understandably on substances and other things that might not be so healthy for them in the long run. But just thinking about, because you're a musician and you grew up in Northern Ireland, are there particular issues or challenges that you've seen here that might be different or more prevalent that you've seen with artists and people working in the music industry in Northern Ireland?
Mm-hmm. Well, Northern Ireland, according to BBC, has the highest rate of diagnosed PTSD globally. Now that's diagnosed, but along with PTSD, it does increase the chances of addiction by 18 times. So if you look at the addiction in Belfast itself, where there's a lot of blues being used, it's a great Vice documentary that's just come out about this as well. A lot of blues are being used. Whenever people were traumatized, and this is an ongoing mental health challenge, it's not periodic. It'll stay until it's treated. What was happening is they were medicated, and that medication usually in the UK will be given at a limited prescription. In Northern Ireland, it was given on an ongoing basis. Now some of the medications are addictive, which led to more addiction challenges there. The alcohol as well is supposed to be my opinion from being a musician. I would say binge drinking is very, very normalised in Belfast and a lot of the UK. But I think, I suppose looking back on some of the tours that I had done, it's you were paid in a case of beer rather than some money. So, yeah.
And have you, for someone who might want to be looking for some support around this, what advice would you give them? Obviously, call us and talk to us, and look at other services like Music Minds Matter and other services that are available. But is there anything from your experience working with as a therapist with people that we support that you would advise people in those kind of who might be kind of concerned about some of this?
Yeah, I would say it's one of those things that it's the sooner you reach out, the better. If you think about what using substances is, if you have challenging feelings come up and you begin to use substances, that is not going to go away. That is going to carry on tomorrow. And if those substances are being used the next day, you are carrying more on tomorrow. So you're going to cultivate emotional debt that eventually will want to get paid off. So prevention is much better than the cure, and it's much better to reach out for a bit of education around it rather than waiting until it's at a crisis point where now I need help. It's never too early to reach out. And if we were to reframe mental health to mental fitness, we don't have any shame of ringing up a dentist whenever we have a sore tooth. We don't have any shame for ringing up the doctor if we've got a sore chest. So it should be no different for mental health.
And one of the reasons why we set up the new peer support groups and this idea of building communities is because one of the things that I've noticed over years of working in the music industry is how much more likely someone is to access services if they hear about them through a peer, as opposed to me telling you here that you should use services. So I'm not saying ignore what I'm saying. What I'm telling you, it could be useful for you, but actually giving people the space to talk to and listen to other people who've had difficulties in the music industry is a really profound way of actually affecting that change, which is also why we have artists like Winnie and Leo on panels like this, so that you can actually hear about their experiences and hopefully there's some kind of connection there. But equally, one of the big issues in the music industry that I've seen over years and in research that I was involved in is social isolation. Social isolation is a massive issue in this industry because of the nature of a lot of the work. So it may be that you're in a busy venue, maybe that you're rigging in a festival, but actually you can still feel profoundly alone. It may be that you're on stage performing in front of a huge crowd, but you can still feel profoundly alone, and you can still feel profoundly disconnected from your loved ones and the people that you care about who aren't able to kind of reach out to in those moments. So I think obviously I would encourage people to talk to their peers and to kind of share and feel build confidence in kind of talking about things that might feel quite challenging, because actually I think we all have lived our own lived experiences in this industry. So there's a lot of positivity in that. But moving on to slightly more positive territory, Winnie, in terms of your the kind of the sort of changes you made to sort of maybe manage some of this in a different way, are you comfortable talking about some of that?
Yeah. So first of all, I got therapy, which is quite key. Actually, that's how I got into music in the first place. And my therapist said I should do something that made me happy as a small child. So I ended up doing singing and getting singing lessons. And I also schedule in breaks so I don't burn out, like regularly every single week and every day must have breaks. Otherwise, I will literally work from 8 a.m. until midnight, like 7 days a week. So I know myself, and also checking in on myself and how I feel, which is something I didn't used to do, because I used to just like keep going regardless of how I felt. And if you would ask me how I felt, I wouldn't even know the answer. So those are the main three things that have made a massive difference. And then, of course, whenever you focus on like prioritizing your well-being, I think it makes it more sustainable for the long term. So I think that's been a major contributor to my success thus far.
And yeah, and sort of contrasting where you might have been before to where you are now, what's the main difference for you in terms of how you feel? If you can
Yeah, it's like night and day, not completely night and day. It's like a different person. So the main difference in how I feel, like I would say I'm a very happy person, a very content person, very easygoing person, very calm person. I was none of those things, like none of those things. I was stressed, I was anxious, I was depressed, I was easy to wind up, I was like messy. I'm hopefully none of those things anymore.
And Leah, from your perspective, so what were the changes you've made that you felt made the biggest difference and had the biggest impact?
I think it was, first it was familial, pressures that my family would have put on me, and decisions of how I want to live my life and what I want to do with my life was blocking them out, and then making a decision that I want to make, and then dealing with the backlash afterwards. And then secondly, it was knowing when to participate and then when to check out, and just take some time to yourself. Like, even if you need to go away for a couple of days, even if you need to just go your family home, spend some time with your cousins and your siblings, blah, 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 that type of thing. And the third one would probably be music. Yeah, will probably be music. I did get a little bit of therapy about 9 to 12 months ago, and ongoing from then. And then that's helped as well, just in terms of regulating my mood, because as an independent contractor, the highs are euphoric and you feel like you're on top of the world, but the lows are really, really like worrying because you feel like you're out at sea. So for me, it was just knowing what my strengths are, and then doing what I can do, and then knowing what my weaknesses are, and then going to see a specialist for what I'm not good at, whatever I'm not well-rounded, and then getting some assistance with that, because it gave me the tools to then now operate on that slowly but surely myself, and I can be like, okay, so I'm dealing with this amount of stress and I'm dealing with this amount of workload. I haven't balanced myself out recently. Let me try and balance myself out, X, Y, Z. So I think it was just like a 3-step thing for me, where it was like some of the stuff I figured out as I grew up and matured and my brain developed, and then some of the other stuff I had to literally just go and be like, ask for a hand. Do you know what I mean?
And do you feel that like now you can talk to peers in the music industry about how you might be feeling in a way that you might not have 10 years ago, say, or?
I think
terms of openness and feeling
Oh
comfortable?
yeah. I think because it's two-sided for me, because some people come to me like after a gig or something and be like, XYZ, you said an XYZ really related to me in XYZ way. So then that's when I feel like I'm doing the majority of my talking, because I know what I'm good at. So I think that's my way of talking to my peers, especially. And then sometimes it will be peers will come to me and be like, I really relate to XYZ. Did you really feel like XYZ when this happened? And then we'll find middle ground. And then that's my own way of helping, because I find that I'm not really comfortable and I'm not really there yet in terms of like my confidence to just turn around and be like, hey bro, I can see you're dealing with XYZ. Been there, you should maybe try. Do you know what I mean? I have an indirect way, because I feel like sometimes it's less shocking to the system when you receive information that might be the truth, that might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not being like fired at you. It's just you're picking it. They're giving you the tools to make up your own decision in your own brain. I think that's how I take information on the best. So that's my approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking back, like, same question, like where you are now and where you might have been in those sort of, in times where it was slightly more difficult to manage, what would you say the major differences for you, how you feel?
In terms,
So
sorry.
like thinking about now versus maybe 10, 15 years ago, what would you say the main differences in terms of how you feel in yourself working music?
More confident. Like if I come across a crisis, especially being an independent contractor, which isn't like guaranteed money every month you have to make, things happen all the time. So it was a crisis or a drought or like a little bit of a period where there's no bookings, right? Being able to be like, been through it before, you'll come out the other side. That's the thing I've seen the most, especially this year, being able to make sense of that and then not always go into crisis panic mode. You know what I mean? There is a time and a place for everything, but knowing when that time and place is.
Yeah. And knowing from your perspective, are there any observations you've had of things that you've seen really benefit people that you work with as a therapist in terms of how they manage this, or how they've changed some of the things that were difficult for them?
Yeah, I mean, what stuck with me there, Leo, what you were saying is that you're having people come up at gigs and share with you about what they're dealing with, which can be a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And it can be difficult to know the right thing to say. So one of the things that we offer, because we are kind of, our mission is prevention over the cure, is training, and things like sharing mental health challenges with someone. It can weigh on us quite heavy, and it can impact us a lot, especially if we're if we're supporting an individual with substance use as well as mental health. But we do offer trainings in mental health first aid, which kind of helps people be equipped with the tools to actually support people and understand the best thing to do in that, and the boundaries and limitations to keep you safe and them. We also offer a training in family and friends, which is looking at how best to support someone with mental health challenges and substance use challenges. But I suppose overall it's in hearing everything that you said, it is trying to find some sort of sustainability within that. You described it as waves, the highs and the lows, and I think that it is making sure that you are able to pick up whenever your body is saying, oh, this is too much, and your mind is saying this is too much, and being able to have tools and a place to go whenever where you know that you can pull back and recharge. So you're kind of making sure that the highs aren't too high and the lows aren't too low, but you're always finding balance in an industry that's always in flux.
Do you see any differences between people at different stages of their career when you work with them, or actually are they the same issues wherever someone might be in their career?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is what I was thinking about earlier, is the more success people tend to have, we are seeing a lot more imposter syndrome. And again, if it all goes back to kind of the beliefs that we develop at a young age, and with artists there can be a very common belief that them as a person are not good enough. If we look at how prevalent substance use challenges are, if we look at how prevalent mental health challenges are, these things usually stem from a very, very early age. But with more success comes more, it kind of reaffirms that belief more. So if we have a belief that we are not good enough and we act on that, then we're starting to build and reinforce that belief is more true. So they don't believe that they deserve this. So over time, their mental health does deteriorate.
Yeah.
Everything does not feel real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just before we have any questions, there's one final question I wanted to ask, but just also to reiterate that if you're interested in anything that we're talking about here, then please do look on our website and look at all of the support available, because if regardless of where you might feel you are and where you might feel you might most benefit from support, the services are really broad now. We've got a full stepped care model, so that means that we can provide preventative support, so you can access educational tools and resources, you can engage with workshops, you can engage with our peer support groups, you can access therapy, and you can access clinical interventions as well. So there's a really broad spectrum of support available through the services. And we've got a family and friends service, so if you're worried about someone that you're working with, then you can also attend some of those sessions and hopefully gain some really invaluable ideas as to how you might support that person and how you might best get them to access services if they need it. But just a last question for everyone. So if there were one piece of advice, or if you've heard something that you think is particularly profound and has changed the way that you think about managing your mental health, would you be able to sort of reflect on what that might be? Maybe we'll start with you.
For a piece of advice.
Yeah, advice for anyone, in terms of how they might sort of best manage their mental health, or whether you've heard something kind of profound that's changed the way you think about sort of positive mental health.
I would just say, well, I suppose there's a good quote that I read this week, so I suppose it's appropriate that ready is a decision, not a feeling. So if anybody is struggling, don't wait until the right time to feel like you're ready to speak out. Just make the decision and speak out. And at the end of the day, humans are pack animals, we're social animals. So the idea that we can do this alone it's not true. So reach out.
Winnie, any reflections from you?
I think just kind of echoing what you said, that in most scenarios we feel fine to go to a specialist to deal with, like you go to a mechanic for your car, you go for the dentist for your teeth, and we should just really normalize, like regularly go in and seeking help for mental health, like earlier the better, because I feel like some people, it's easy to leave it till the last minute thinking you can work it out because you've been here before, you can work it out, but like if we just normalize going to a specialist like we do for everything else, I feel like it would be much better for all of us. That's my advice.
Thank you. And Leah?
I guess for me, it would be if you crash, like whatever you're doing in life, whatever you're trying to do, and you feel yourself crashing, like you shouldn't feel ashamed to just sit down and like take a break and then recharge and then go back at whatever you was doing. Because I feel like now it's a lot of shame and people is crashing and they don't understand why, when, how, or what is going on, and they'll just keep riding the wave. Because I've been there and I've been just riding the wave as well. And then you're crashing and you find you're irritable and you're getting angry at your peers and this and that. Those are all small signs that you maybe need to take like even like a 1 day, 2 day break and then just like troubleshoot what's going on in your system. So that'll be my only thing.
Thank you. Before let's see if there's any questions. Do you want to plug your gig later?
Yes. Headlining Ulster Sports, which is 5 minutes around the corner for BBC Radio Ulster tonight at 11 p.m. It's a late one, but if any of you are about, feel free to come through. As you know, tickets are free and it's for the council and it's for a good cause. So.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thanks very much, everyone. This is a really good panel. So I'm a lecturer, so I'm coming at it from a different way. I teach future music industry professionals and current music industry professionals. And one of the things that I do at the moment is try to convince my colleagues that we need to include well-being very explicitly in our curriculum. So if, hypothetically, one were to include this, what would you actually want covered? Whether for Winnie and Leo, I don't know if you went to university, doesn't matter if you did or not, but something you wish someone had taught you when you were starting out in your career, or indeed for Eoghan and Joe, if there's something that you think music industry professionals need to learn in that kind of learning stage of their career.
Do you want to go for it?
burnout. See, if I would have known about burnout in uni, it would have been like, yeah, perfect. You know, burnout for me, definitely burnout.
Probably all the resources that are available and where to find them and like which things to go for, which scenarios. Like sometimes you need a psychiatrist, sometimes you need a therapist, sometimes you need a psychologist, sometimes you need talking therapy, sometimes you need like different things. So I feel like just knowing all the different things that are available and when to reach out. Because I think a lot of people that I know reach out at the like when it's you're about to go to hospital. Like you should have said something 6 months ago.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Actually, thinking about some of the, we've just started 2 quite exciting pilots with music hubs, which are really focused on building understanding of the needs of emerging artists and emerging into the industry, so crew as well. And I think probably a good way of understanding what the needs are of your students is to look at people who've been through through the systems and asking them what they would have most liked to have seen or what they experienced in the early stages of their career. Because I think it can be quite different from. There are some differences when we work with crew sometimes, or when you work when you work with people who work in other areas of the industry, you'll see a lot of similarities, but also some key differences. So I think actually knowing. Understanding what the kind of the sort of the issues might be in those early stages of a career, or at a tipping point, or at a point where someone's transitioning into another role, that's useful to know, because then you can understand whether, I mean, certainly burnout is by far and away the most. I think when I was at Music Minds Matter as well, burnout was definitely the most popular session that was run through Music Minds Matter as well, and we see that as well. So burnout is definitely going to be common stress and those kind of things in the early stages, but also I think financial precarity, like preparing for sort of lean periods, which is not uncommon for people when they're coming out of education. And it was definitely my experience of coming out of music education was a lot of lean periods, but that's probably more to do with my lack of talent. But I think there's a lot to be learned there, and in some ways. I feel like I've evolved from a position of we should deliver these things for people in the music industry to let's learn what people would most benefit from. But that's not to say that there aren't common issues and things that people would experience in the early stages, and we can talk about those afterwards if you want. I can give you some advice.
Hello everyone, I'm from Drake Music Scotland. I'm also on the board of the Scottish Music Industry Association, and these are very common themes that we're talking about as well. And I just wondered about the question of burnout and this idea that actually it's the whole culture of the industry in a sense that is creating this, and a lot of the onus seems to be on the artists and the fantastic organisations that are giving them the support. But I wonder if there are any indications of the insiders in the industry about, what's happening and how artists are being used and what can actually be done on a kind of change in the culture level.
I mean, I would say the good news is that I know there are lots of really interesting conversations that have led to new developments with lots of organisations working in the industry. So there is a change happening. It is acknowledged as a major issue, and it is acknowledged as something that needs to be addressed. So as a charity, we've obviously had a lot of conversations over the last year, which are hopefully going to affect a lot of change. I think that doesn't mean to say that it's a perfect world and within 2 years everything's going to be fine. But I think there is definitely an increasing acknowledgement of the fact that this is something that needs to be managed, and actually people need to be provided with the right kind of support and resources. And you're seeing more and more of that, particularly with a lot of the funding that's in place being provided alongside a lot of wellbeing support and a lot of advice and a lot of kind of mentorship and stuff like that. So there is a change there happening, but that doesn't mean to say that it's that everything will look different in 2 years' time. I think we're thinking about kind of 5 to 10 years before you might see a really healthy industry where everyone feels supported. But equally, also, there's a lot that people are doing in themselves. You know, you heard from Winnie before around managing that as well. So you're seeing more and more people putting their own boundaries in place. Building into contracts as well, building into whether it's a contract or whether it's an email exchange with a venue where you say, this is what you can expect from me and this is what I expect from you, and you know, putting that boundary in place. I think those things can kind of really help as well. Sorry, I jumped in first, but before we go to you, does anyone else want to feedback on that? Go ahead.
Yes, I don't know. It's a great presentation, guys. It's excellent topic. What have you have a look at tech and how is that impacting mental health artists as well? For example, artists in terms of their music being going digital. You know, you make great music, but it's not, you know, say like a Spotify or something like that. You know, you're getting a small amount of percentage for your music. You know, your music is split up everywhere. You're not earning from the music, everybody else is. You know, so all of that's a pressure of social media, and put your music out there, and people have fear in terms of putting your music out there in terms of what people are going to say about it, you know, and or say about you as an artist. So I think that's something that needs to be looked at in terms of that fear. Putting music out there, being online, that social space, or even online bullying, you know, what happened to artists, you know, in that social space, so social media space. So I think that's something to look at the moment.
That's a really good point. In terms of the people that we work with, do you see that as a common think about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a major issue. So one, the money is much less. You know, I was actually speaking to Joe 5 minutes before we started, where I seen an interview that someone had said it used to cost 99p to download a song, and if that was say 1 million downloads, that is $1 million. And now 1 million streams on Spotify gets anywhere between 3,500 to 5,000. And if you think about the rise in studio costs, a PR, a radio plugger, maybe a music video, it is a losing battle at the minute. So, you know, 1 million used to be a big number. Now it's not much. So a lot of that can absolutely impact people's mental health. But also, if you think about it, that, you know, if you're able to go to a job 9 to 5, okay, switch off the laptop, clock off, and that's it. That is not happening in the music industry. People are scrolling on the TikToks that they now have to make. They are scrolling through their analytics of how many views did this get, how many did that get. Bullying is happening, absolutely. It's an open shop constantly. And that does add a lot of pressure, and it does also feed into the burnout as well, because they're not allowing themselves time to step away from the job, close the work laptop, switch off, go do something for you, do, I don't know, nice cup of tea and a biscuit, anything.
Just the flip side of that, though, I have seen good examples of people who found a really close connection to their fan base, and actually therefore have built quite a healthy relationship with their fans, and they're the people they trust, and they're the people that they you know, that mutual respect there and the connections is sometimes really profound and sort of, you know, really benefits someone's career and makes them feel.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And I was saying, the artist has to put himself out there. Yeah. You know, when you put yourself out there, you never know what's going to happen. You know, so that's the thing I'm saying.
Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up? I think we're probably in the end there. So thanks for joining us, and thanks to Winnie and Leo and Eoghan, obviously. And I appreciate, obviously, it's a really warm room as well. So thank you for staying. Particularly warm when you're up here. But
I thought it was only one. I was like, is anybody else letting?
But no, thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, look on our website, have a look at all the support that's available. Look at Music Minds Matters website and help musicians as well. There are lots of really good services out there you can access. And yeah, we'll be sticking around. So if you want to chat to us afterwards, we'll be. Thank you.